in events, we don't talk about it very much, but the chances are, I mean, there's 1 in 3 adults have some kind of hearing loss. If you're organising an event, you're going to have someone there who's suffering from hearing loss.
Welcome to the meeting room. I'm Emma Eversham. I'm joined by Harvey, and we're going to be shining a spotlight on event accessibility for the deaf and hard of hearing, from navigating networking sessions to taking part in incentive activities or appearing in industry panels. The challenges faced by delegates and professionals who are deaf or hard of hearing are often overlooked in the events sector. Paul, you have plenty of experience with this, don't you?
Yes, I do, Emma. I should say, first of all, it's exciting to be on the other side of the table for one on the meeting room, because I don't usually get to be here. It's a topic that I know a lot about, so I'm the guest today, which is very exciting.
Yeah, the tables have turned. Tell us about your hearing loss.
I have a sensory neural hearing loss. In layman's terms, just means I'm a bit deaf. I wear hearing aids. It's a permanent hearing loss, so it's not going to get any better. And it's kind of the most common kind of hearing loss that there is in the UK. It comes from basically either old age or kind of hearing damage. On all my notes from the doctors, I always said unexplained hearing loss. So I don't know why.
How long has that have you had that?
From primary school, my teachers noticed that I was having trouble hearing and not necessarily paying attention. It was decided I didn't need hearing aids, and then it did deteriorate. And then in my 20s, it was I eventually was given hearing aids. And then in my 30s, I eventually started wearing the hearing aids. Now I'm in my 40s, I'm, more than happy to talk about it and not embarrassed about it, because I think that is one of the main things. It's so many people, there's such a stigma attached to hearing aids still, I think, in this country and around the world.
Definitely seems to be people are more accepting of getting their eyes checked than they are with.
Yeah, I mean, I got glasses hearing when I was about 8 or 9, and I thought nothing of it. And I just wore glasses because it meant I could see. But then when it turned out I needed something to help me with my hearing, it was like, oh no, I don't want to wear that. And I think that's a really common thing, because I think there are lots of, in fact, I know there are stats to show that there are millions of people who would benefit from wearing hearing aids who don't have them. I've got stats, actually, if you like. Do you want to hear these stats?
Yeah, let's have the stats, please.
Okay, we'll start with the big stats. 1 in 3 adults in this country have some form of hearing loss, tinnitus, or are deaf. That's 1 in 3 adults.
Wow.
That's 18 million people. When you go to the over 55s, like I said earlier, your hearing does get worse with age, but the over 55s, it's half of the over 55s suffer from hearing loss in some way. Now, there are 2 million people in the UK that have been issued with hearing aids, but it's thought that there are 6.5 million people who would benefit from wearing hearing aids. The other thing is there's 2 million people who have been issued with hearing aids, but 20% of those, that's 400,000 people, simply don't wear them. You've got a lot of people who would benefit from wearing them who aren't wearing them. It's just a staggering amount of people. And when you think of it like that, you realise that it's a problem that we don't really talk about in society very much. By extension, in events, we don't talk about it very much, but the chances are, I mean, there's 1 in 3 people 1 in 3 adults have some kind of hearing loss. If you're organising an event, you're going to have someone there who's suffering from hearing loss. You
cover the events industry as a journalist, but you also attend lots of events.
Yeah.
What's your experience of going along to events as someone with hearing loss?
So there are certain events and certain types of events that are more of a struggle than others. I mean, and I'd say the number one is networking events, because networking events involve talking and loud rooms and loud environments. And when you wear hearing aids, that's one of the hardest things to deal with, whether it's at a networking event or if you're just in the pub or kind of wherever. If you're in an environment where there's lots of people talking, your hearing aids, they sit on the back of your ear, so they pick up everything around, not like your real ears. They're kind of cupped to kind of pick up things kind of from a certain direction. Hearing aids are picking up everything, and when you wear hearing aids, they just literally amplify everything in the room, and you can be standing next to someone and not have a clue what they're saying, because all you can hear is like the clatter of kind of conversation like 20 yards away. And it's really kind of strange and disorientating, but it's a very difficult. I'd say an environment like a networking event is one of the most challenging environments for someone who's hard of hearing.
What about kind of trade shows, attending trade shows and conferences, when you have the education sessions that might be in the corner of a...
So this is a really interesting one, and it has improved. I'd say that people have definitely made improvements to content and education sessions in that subtitling has become much more prevalent, and it's pretty much standard. You go to most of it, like big kind of trade shows, will have subtitling on the main stages as standard, and it's not always perfect. As someone who's hard of hearing, I'm just pleased to see that they've made an effort, because it doesn't always feel like people have made an effort. That is a big thing. And actually, subtitles is a really interesting one, because I've got more stats. Subtitles are used by 28% of the UK population, which is just over a quarter. People just at home watching telly will have subtitles on all the time, 28% of them. When you look at the younger generation coming through, 16 to 24-year-olds, that's 61%.
Yeah, that's high.
61%, more than half, well over half of people from the new generation coming through absorb content with subtitles on. So regardless of the whole kind of hard of hearing loss type thing, subtitles are going to be a major thing for event organizers, because the younger generation coming through just expects subtitles on all their content. So one of the things that people do with content is education sessions. There's this thing where you'll have the headphones where you can sit down and kind of just put on a headphone, and it'll just be kind of like a silent session, it'll sound silent from the outside, and that's quite a clever thing. But to me, I'm wearing hearing aids. I've already got things on my ears. As
a journalist covering those kind of sessions, I find you've got to commit. I like to dip in and out of those sessions, and so putting the headphones on means you've properly committed to sitting into the whole session, which is obviously what organisers want.
That's how they get you.
But I wondered how does that, because it is very they do cut out all noise from elsewhere, and also it stops it booming around the rest of the.
I suppose the thing I quite like about those is that they do put you on a level playing field. Everyone's getting the same kind of and if I do bother to sit down and take out my hearing aids, it's just an extra barrier, like the hearing aids. And that's one of the things that happens a lot, is that wearing hearing aids, it's just an extra thing you have to think about. It's an extra strain. It's kind of all the time. It can be tiring, kind of straining to hear people all day, every day. It can, and then the end of the day, you kind of you get home and you're like, oh, thank God I can take my hearing aids out.
Is this something you've spoken to others in the industry about, who are hard of hearing or deaf?
Literally over the last year, it's become more of a talking point. And I don't know whether it's that I've become more comfortable talking about it or other people have, but I think I've seen it kind of cropping up here and there. For example, I was at an event in January, and it was raised by, again, a member of kind of someone in their 20s who was just suggested that we should be making events more accessible for hard of hearing people. And I think that was the first time I'd ever heard anyone suggest it. And then in the summer, someone got in touch with me. It was Jade Spencer from BCD Meetings and Events, and she'd written a piece about being deaf in the events industry. She wears hearing aids, but she grew up in a profoundly deaf family, and so she can do sign language. And she wrote a really fantastic piece that shone a light on it for the first time. It's on MNIT, and it's really worth reading, because there's lots of great kind of tips and experiences. And also I've had other people coming up to me, and quite a few people from over, I was saying, the over 55s, kind of a more kind of hard of hearing. There are quite a few people have come up to me and say, oh, Paul, I noticed you wear hearing aids. I'm just getting hearing aids, and they want to talk about it. I'm more than happy to do that. I'll always talk about it. It's a really important thing to do, and that's something that happens as well at home as well. Or with my family, like my mom and my dad and my granny a few years ago, they've all been getting hearing aids, but I've had hearing aids for years. So I've been kind of doling out advice on how to get used to them. And it is something that takes getting used to, wearing hearing aids. You put on a pair of glasses, you can see.
Yeah.
you put in some hearing aids, and it's you can hear, but it's not hearing in exactly the same way that you've maybe been used to before. It took me certainly a couple of years to get used to wearing hearing aids and actually gearing up to wearing them all the time and accepting that, like, I had to wear them all the time. It's a mental thing to get over as well, so it is difficult.
How aware do you think the industry is about this issue?
Based on my experience, it's not. And if it is, it kind of doesn't really want to address it. There are some people who are really good. Like, I have mentioned it to a few people over the past few years, and most notably, and I will name and not shame her because she's wonderful, but Shonali Devereaux of the Meetings Industry Association. I mentioned it to her, and then at the next event that I saw her at, she immediately was like, I was talking to her and she was like, is this too loud for you? Can you hear me? And immediately I was like, do you need to go somewhere else? And I was like, that's fantastic. That's the kind of thing we should be doing.
Yeah.
Because it just made me feel, seen. It just the fact that she thought about that and she thought about me. That's what event organisers should be doing, I think.
Yeah.
And it's quite an easy thing to do in a way, because I think we all ask, are there any kind of disabilities that you should be aware of on kind of registration? And so if you see that someone says, I wear hearing aids, you can immediately think, well, I need to cater for them.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? There's been great headway with accessibility in general, making it accessible for people with varying, who may not be able to physically be able to walk into the event or who are neurodiverse. There has been lots of talk about it, hasn't there? But you're right, hard of hearing and deafness doesn't seem to be talked about that much.
I remember, this is a good few years ago now, I was at an event, and it was a content session, and it was quite a sparsely attended one, but we were in kind of a big room, and the person who was delivering the session looked around the room and he was holding a microphone, and he just said, oh, there's only a small group of you, I won't bother with the microphone, and put down the microphone. And that just meant I couldn't hear him.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel able to put my hand up and say, actually, can you use the microphone? Because I can't hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be that awkward person, but it's not awkward. It's
yeah. And that's the thing. I didn't feel like it should be on me to get him to make his event accessible. He'd been given a microphone. There was a reason he'd been given the microphone, and he just decided not to use it.
Yeah, are there some small improvements that perhaps event organisers can make?
Using microphones is one. Turning the sound down at events. Because I mentioned networking events before, and there is one industry event that I go to every year that I won't name that has a networking event, and you go into a huge room full of people, cavernous, and they're playing pumping dance music. I'm like, how do you expect me to hear?
Yeah.
And when you consider the stats, 1 in 3 people are going to be hard of hearing in there, and with the over 55s, it's half of them.
Yeah. No one's hearing anybody.
No one's hearing anyone. So why
space.
are we doing that? At a networking event, you decide where to have the networking, and is there somewhere that people can go that's a bit quieter? It's just something like that.
Yeah. I know there are events where you have a quiet room. So quite a few trade shows now have a built-in quiet room, don't they?
There's also the issue of fam trips. Fam trips obviously have a lot of activities on them. And there are certain activities that, it's not that I can't do them, mainly ones involving water.
Okay.
Because basically, it's like, my hearing aids don't mix with water. So they go in there, that means they will break, I will be without hearing. And it's not as if it's dead easy to just go and get a replacement. So anything involving water, I'm very nervous about, and I have to know what's going on. But I've been on trips, I remember I went on a trip, this is a good few years ago now, and one of the activities was whitewater rafting. And I said, well, I wear hearing aids. How wet is this likely to get? Because I and they were like, "Oh no, you'll get wet." And so that meant that like we were going whitewater rafting for 2 hours. It was like, well, I've got to I either don't take part in the activity or I've got to be deaf for the entire activity. Because when I take my hearing aids out, I basically can't hear well enough to get by.
And yeah, from a safety perspective, I guess if you're whitewater rafting, you need to be able to hear if there's
Yeah,
something.
well, I hadn't even thought of that.
But yeah, it's not very. I guess it's that we talk about being inclusive, and then if those kind of, you're put off from doing certain activities, then it's not
I mean, there was another activity I was on a fam trip a bit more recently, and it was the same thing. I needed to know how much water was going to be involved with the activity. And the organizer just kind of was being really coy about it and didn't want to tell me. And maybe they didn't know, I don't know, but it was like I had said in the registration, I wear hearing aids and will like have difficulty taking part in water-based things. And like, it just nothing happened. It was that kind of thing. They must have seen that I had a disability, and they kind of just chose to be like, oh, he'll sort himself out. And I did, but it just meant that I couldn't take part in that bit of the activity.
Yeah, it goes back to the education piece, doesn't it? I think, how can we make people more aware of how to cater for people who are hard of hearing, which is a large proportion of their delegates, isn't it?
I don't want to have a go at the event industry specifically for being bad at this, because I think it's like as in society, everyone's as bad as each other. It's a case of talking more about it and making people more aware of it, and quite how many people there are affected by it. And I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to kind of do this today and kind of like talk more generally about it, because I think that is just by shining a light on it, people become more aware of it.
I mean, how would you say event planners can encourage a culture that would be helpful and make delegates who are hard of hearing feel more comfortable and included at events?
I'd say talking about it again, but like when I mentioned earlier about Shonali kind of saying to me and that just made me feel included, whereas at other events, like the other ones I mentioned, where I haven't been able to take part in like the activity, or kind of like there's been the networking event and I haven't been able to hear anyone, it's almost as if like I've thought, oh, the organizer hasn't thought about me. And that's not a nice thing to think. That isn't a way that you want your delegates to go away feeling from an event, that they haven't been thought about. So it's just a small thing, just something just as small as kind of asking them about it, talking to them about it, just asking a question in an email beforehand. Is there anything you need specifically to this?
Yeah.
It's only a small thing. It's small changes that make a huge difference.
Do you think there are perhaps some societal changes that need to happen?
I think there is a huge stigma still, and it's a shame, really. But people are very kind of resistant to accepting that they have a hearing loss, and you just don't see hearing aids in the same way. You wear glasses. Glasses look cool. Hearing aids don't look cool. You can't have a hearing aid that's a fashion statement. Or, well, maybe that's what we need to do.
Yeah, but I also think with hearing aids, they're not as visible. And glasses are on your. You look at someone face on, you can definitely see. But there are hearing aids now where they're much more hidden, or not that they need to be, because I don't think
But that's the instinct, isn't it, for like manufacturers to make them as hidden as possible, so that people don't know that you have a hearing loss. So it's like even that manufacturers have a stigma about.
Yeah, everyone's involved.
Yeah, even I do, because like my hearing aids have like volume on them, and like I turn them on and they're at a certain volume. And then, like, if I can't hear something, I kind of feel bad about, like, turning up the volume. I'm like, well, I don't usually need to turn up the volume. I'm not that bad, am I? I'm kind of like, so even now, I'm still kind of, like refusing to accept that I can't hear. It's very silly.
Yeah. I have never actually noticed them on that you're wearing them. So
yeah. Well, maybe I do need to make them into more of a fashion statement. They're available in different colours. like there's an exciting bit where you get to choose what color hearing aid you would like. And like I started out with like brown to like going in my hair, and then like as the years have gone on, I've been like, oh, let's go Razzie, let's go purple this time.
Like neon pink.
No one ever really sees them. I tell you, there is a gap in the market there for people making statement hearing aids.
Beyond the practicalities, what's the impact of making events more accessible to everybody, including those who are hard of hearing?
Someone talking to me about my disability just made me feel seen. And if you're at an event and you're feeling like you're not being seen, you haven't been thought of, the organizer hasn't cared about you, that makes you feel bad about that event. Like I mentioned earlier, that person that decided not to use their microphone, I have avoided them every single show where I've been. If I see they're on the bill, I'm like, I'm not going to go and see them.
It does have an impact, big impact.
But it does, yeah, and maybe that's wrong of me, and that's kind of vindictive and cruel. But that's how I feel, you know.
Yeah, but it's often how something makes you feel, isn't it? And if that's had that impact, then it does have a long-lasting legacy.
Yeah, I mean, as event organisers, we just want to make people feel as good as possible and not feel bad. And it just by being inclusive, making your events more accessible, it helps that happen. Why on earth would you not do it?
Thanks for speaking to me, Paul, and highlighting the issue. I think it seems that we just need a little bit more thoughtful as an industry.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.